Good to catch up again with Grain Producers SA Chief Executive Brad Perry. Brad, how are you going today?
Yeah, good, thanks, Ricky.
We wanted to check in with you after our recent chat with the Emergency Services Minister, Joe Zakhatch. We asked him about your organisation's concern about the Harvest Code of Practice. Just explain for listeners just what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so for a couple of years, the fire danger ratings have been changing. So they've been doing some new research, which we welcome, research and science, to change those. So we've moved from a grassland fire danger index to a grassland fire behaviour index. So a number of elements have changed, and the one thing that we thought wouldn't change along the way, and we kept getting told wouldn't change along the way, was the grain harvesting code of practice. So the final number that grain harvesters use is the maximum when they shouldn't be harvesting, and that takes into a number of weather circumstances in that calculation. And last month we were told that was changing from 35 to 40, which has left us with very little time to be able to get that message out to grain producers who are weeks away from harvest.
So 35 to 40, that's the temperature at which you need to not be harvesting? I know there are fines associated, or is it just a code of practice at this stage if you are harvesting above that temperature?
So there's a number of factors that are taken into account, so including humidity, wind speed, etc. So it's a calculation that will get you to a particular number, and this number they're saying under the GFBI is 40. So I think in a majority of circumstances, grain producers do the right thing. If it is hot or windy, they will stop harvesting. But I think we just don't want to have that level of confusion, and we don't want to see something rolled out that's rushed and have grain producers who are really focused on a huge harvest having to think about, do I use the GFDI or do I use the GFBI, because a lot of them won't know the difference or what the calculations mean.
Now, you've heard the Minister's response when we asked him about your organisation's request that there be a bit of a delay on implementation on this. What did you make of his comments?
Well, I think it's taken years for us to work with grain producers and for grain producers to get accustomed to the grass fire danger index as it stands now. So it's quite well known across the industry. So grain producers are adhering to that. And I did hear Minister Zakhatch's interview on your program, Ricky. And I certainly welcome investment in education around this, because I think that's a critical element. I think for us, again, we'll just reiterate to the CFS, as we've written to them and we've communicated to them, that we think we should stick with the 35 number under the GFDI this harvest. There's not enough time to roll out a new program like this, regardless of whether the CFS says, the numbers are similar. We need to put a education behind this. We can't do this, half-baked.
Now, when it comes to the harvesting of the crop, I know in recent years there have been harvester fires. Is there an increased risk of that this season if we've got a pretty thick crop coming off the paddock?
Yeah, it's an interesting one this season because we've really, it's quite wet. So, in that regard, the danger may seem like it's less because it is wet, but in saying that, because it's wet, there's a lot of fuel load as well around. So, whether that be I've seen a number on roadside verges, etc., adjacent to grain paddocks. So, I think the risk is out there, and always will remind grain producers that you've got to be vigilant when it comes to this. The last thing you want to do is light your paddock on fire or your neighbour's paddock on fire. It can have, as we've seen, really bad consequences.
Well, late last week, the government was also thumping the drum about its reinstated farm firefighting unit grant program. That kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Often the farmers have got the firefighting equipment there in hot conditions in case that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I think, and that's been oversubscribed, so that's good news. I think any element of assistance on farm firefighting is really important. So, we've seen the uptake of the grants programs been really well received. So I think that's great news. And we're also working on a program to try and get a little bit of funding for some PPE for grain producers as well, because you want them to be fully prepared when they're fighting fires. So if they are going out their farm firefighting units, you want them to have the option to be fully kitted out and protected. So I think that's something we'll continue to work on. But yeah, certainly welcome, the grant program being oversubscribed. I think that's good news.
Is it a sign that maybe being so heavily subscribed, I think only 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 applicants got grants, and a lot of it went to the Adelaide Hills, that the government might need a fast track and maybe have a bigger round next time around?
Oh, look, I think we'd welcome any further investment in farm firefighting units, and also anything to do with fighting fires on farm. I think the more equipped you can be, the better. That's the reality of it. So if the government does want to go down that path, like you said, 1 in 5 receive grants, so it certainly shows that it'd be grant money well spent.
Well, Brad Perry, Chief Executive from Grain Producers SA, thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Ricky.